Hello, dear friends. Hello, dear audience. You are watching sensational program that's called Kak-Tee Kak-Tuss. And today, in our studio, very special guest, human guest, one of the most famous journalists and one of the managing directors of Deutsche Welle. Meet Carsten von Nahmen. Hi, Carsten. Hello.
Hello. How are you?
I'm fine. As you remember, I'm Iya. I'm representing nature. And today we are talking with our friend, AI, who represents technology. But at the beginning, we would like to tell him, what are you and who are you? Please introduce yourself.
Well, I'm a human being. First of all, I'm a journalist by profession. And currently, I'm the managing director of DW Academy, which is one part of DW, Deutsche Welle, Germany's international public service broadcaster. So obviously, the broadcaster provides programs and information content for people around the world in 32 languages. And the Academy is a very special part of DW. We train and do consulting around the world. We try to support independent media NGOs in their struggle to support freedom of speech and also free access to information, which obviously is a human right. And that is part of our mission to support people who want to protect this right. So that's what I'm doing right now. But again, I'm a journalist by profession, have been working as a journalist for a number of media, mostly also for DW. But for the last 6 years or so, I've been exclusively working for DW Academy.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, dear Carsten von Nahmen. We are honored having you in the studio today. And from very secret, special source of information, we found out that life for Carsten didn't start from the top. In order to become a managing director of Deutsche Welle, he needed to work a lot. At the beginning, he was a trainee and he worked and studied, and he has been a journalist since, he can correct me, 1992, if I'm not mistaken, working everywhere, all around the world, in Africa, in Russia, in Pakistan, in, I don't know, maybe in America, of course, yes?
Ja, die New Yorker trotzen dem Angriff und zugleich ist eine Debatte um innere Sicherheit und Einwanderung wieder in Gang gekommen. Carsten von Nahmen in Washington. Präsident Donald Trump will die Lotterie zur Green Card stoppen. Wir haben es gehört, Einwanderung nur noch nach Leistung könnte das Motto heißen. Wie kommt das an?
Letztlich kann man ja nicht alles und jeden Ort absichern und dicht machen in einem riesigen Land wie den USA, in großen Städten wie New York. Wichtiger ist da wahrscheinlich, dass man tatsächlich die Gemeinden sensibilisiert, also die muslimische Gemeinde hier in den USA. Und da ist natürlich die anti-islamische Stimmung, die Donald Trump schürt, eher kontraproduktiv.
Ich danke Ihnen für die Information und Einschätzung aus Washington, Carsten von Nahmen.
So, it's quite hard work, as I heard. Can we ask you today, how did you manage all these years being a journalist and survive?
Our U.S. correspondent Carsten von Nahmen is standing by with the latest from Las Vegas. And Carsten, you're actually standing by with someone who has survived the massacre. Tell us more.
Absolutely. I'm standing here where it happened on Sunday evening with Deborah Jane Power, one of the survivors of this mass shooting on Sunday evening. Now you're back here at the scene. What comes to your mind here?
It's still surreal. It's hard to imagine that this was where all of this craziness and chaos and massacre took place. And I see the places where we got people out and where I hid, and it just, it's I can't really put it into words.
Still, there is a discussion going on, not just since Sunday, but basically for many years now, about the issue of gun control. And the shooter there had many weapons, even semi-automatic, automatic weapons. What is your take on that?
So I lost my phone in all of the chaos. I haven't really, we've been worried more about safety of people and injury. I have heard bits and pieces that what he had were illegal guns. I mean, he shouldn't have had them anyway. And I don't know how gun control helps when it's illegal. I don't know that you need to have an AR to go hunting. So I think there should be some changes. But certainly bad people break laws, and I don't know how we stop the bad people from doing bad things.
So you're going back to Tucson, Arizona now, back to home. Wish you all the best. And back to Berlin, this discussion on gun control here in America definitely will continue.
Thank you very much, Carsten von Nahmen, standing by there with Deborah, a survivor of this massacre. And we thank you very much to both of you for sharing the very latest there from Las Vegas.
Well, it's a great job, and it's more than just a job. It's definitely a calling to be a journalist. I actually started already in 1987 when I was 17 years old and started working for the local newspaper in my hometown as a reporter. And I always wanted to be a journalist because I was just interested in meeting people and reporting on things, analyzing things. And in 1992, I actually joined DW then as a trainee, even though I had worked as a freelancer, but obviously I was still very young and inexperienced. So I started as a trainee at DW. And then I worked in different departments at DW, in radio, at the English service of DW, later then in TV, in the news department and sports. But also in between, I worked for a number of different newspapers. I also worked in Namibia for the Namibian Broadcasting Corporation for their German service, because there is a small German minority in Namibia. And I did all these things. And I just took it step by step. So I didn't really think about a career. It was just that opportunities were offered to me, or sometimes I looked for them actively and just took it step by step. And yes, I'd say it was hard work in many ways, but it was also lots of fun. It is still lots of fun, even though I'm now a bureaucrat, a manager, and no longer an active journalist. But it's also fun to be a manager, to be able to decide things, to create stuff and to make things happen. But I also always loved to be a journalist, whether it was as the head of news and current affairs at DW, or as a correspondent in Washington, or in many other departments I worked in. That's, I think, is the secret, if you like, that you have to love your job, that you have fun in your job, and then it doesn't feel like a lot of work. It's basically just what you do.
Ducks Unlimited Canada is working with K+S here in Saskatchewan on a number of projects in connection with the new potash mine that they have built here. Why are you working with K+S?
Well, K+S, as part of their agreement with the Ministry of Environment here in Saskatchewan, we're looking at trying to positively impact any of the impacts on their wetlands with this project. So as part of the process, they were to restore some of the wetlands or anything that had a negative impact to try to replace or restore some wetlands on the landscape. And that's what Ducks Unlimited does here in Saskatchewan. We look at restoring and preserving habitats.
And how happy are you with the cooperation?
Oh, incredibly. K+S was just a fantastic partner to deal with from the very beginning, throwing out ideas to each other to see exactly how it can work, to make sure both parties came out comfortable with their positions. It was an incredibly fantastic and a very favorable negotiation.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
I prefer to talk about those fun days when you were a journalist And after that, you became a trainer when you started teaching journalists. Wow, how many countries did you visit? How many journalists did you teach? And what, the most important things, what did you tell them? How to become a free journalist?
Well, I can't tell you how many journalists I really met and trained, but must have been several thousand. Overall, I visited, not just for professional reasons, also as a tourist, exactly 100 countries now last year.
Congratulations!
I reached my 100th country, which was Mauritania. Very fascinating, interesting country, not very much known by most people. And yeah, so I just love that. So again, that's also not a very terrible fate for me. It's actually what I love to do. And yeah, being a trainer, of course, is a great experience because you can pass on knowledge. You can hopefully, if you do it well, inspire people, give them a push, because that's something I always had in my life and my career. I had mentors who were supporting me, who were giving me a chance, who were giving me advice. And for instance, one very important piece of advice I got when I was working in Namibia, not at the Namibian Broadcasting Corporation, but even a few years before that, as an intern at a small German language newspaper in Namibia, the editor-in-chief told me, "We are not the judges." That's like the basic rule in journalism. We are not the judges. We are providing information. We are giving the audience, the readers, the listeners, the viewers, the users, the information they need to make up their own mind and to make their own decisions and to be informed when they make decisions. But we are not the judges. We are not supposed to tell people what they should think and what they should do. Of course, as journalists, we sometimes try to give those who are powerless some platform to express their views and to make their voices heard. That is part of the job. But we're not taking sides, even when we do that. We just present that case. And again, the audience has to decide whether, they want to take sides or if they just take the information and store it somewhere in the back of their head. That is our job as journalists, to provide information and to give an as accurate picture as possible of the world. Obviously, the world is very complicated. No one can be accurate. There's so much information and you have only 3 minutes in a report, or you have only, 200 lines in a newspaper. You cannot really show the world as it is in all its complexities. But our job is to try to be as accurate as possible, to not take sides. Again, no one is completely unbiased. We all have our prejudices. We all have our experiences. We have our perspectives, our opinions. But we should always try as journalists to not put them up front, but to really try to be fair, to be accurate, and to provide the different sides, the different angles of a story. And that is what I have always told the students that I have been working with, that is the job. We are not activists. If you want to be an activist, become a politician, join an NGO, I don't care, but don't be a journalist. That's not our job. It's a kind of old-fashioned point of view, especially in these times when everybody wants to be an influencer and journalists think they have to be more relatable and have to tell stories through their own person. And that can be one way of telling stories. But again, you always have to be very careful not to just insert your opinion all the time or try to push people into a certain direction. Again, that's not our job. A famous German journalist once said that a good journalist never becomes part of a cause, even if it is a good cause. And I think that is something we always have to keep in mind. And that's what I'm telling young people I'm working with.
There is probably a special method and methodology of German Academy, Deutsche Welle. How do they approach teaching? What kind of approach do you use, for example?
Well, the most important thing is that we try to have a hands-on approach, a practical approach, which means that theory is great, but you can read as many books as you like. You can listen to teachers, trainers as much as you want. If you don't do it yourself, you will not really take it in. So we always, when we do trainings, what we do first of all is we discuss, of course, the topic, but it's not just us telling people this is this and this. This is how we do it at DW, and this is how you should do it. We have a discussion about journalistic principles, about the basic rules of certain journalistic formats, whether it's online or social media, radio, TV, no matter. But so what are the standards there? What are the basic rules? And do we all agree on those rules? And to tell you the truth, sometimes I learn something myself, because I remember a training course that we did in Yemen many years ago before the war there broke out. And we were doing some trainings and hands-on exercises on television reports. And one of our participants, he was filming basically everybody in the room at a conference. And we were like, yeah, that's kind of boring, and you shouldn't do that. You don't have to just show a few faces to, show there's a variety of people, but you don't have to show everybody. And then we discussed this, and our trainee said, well, that's not how it works here. If we just show a few people, the people who are not shown will be offended, and this might cause conflict, and this might cause violence. So we said, okay, understood. So things are different here. But let's try to do it in a way that is still kind of entertaining, not just, filming down row after row after row. So let's do it in a different way. Let's use the camera to show different angles and to make it a bit more interesting for the eye. So this is kind of the core of our approach. Of course, we have our expertise, we have our standards, but we always try to accommodate the situation on the ground, the traditions, the culture, or the political situation on the ground. And then we try to make this work for both sides. So our expertise and the local expertise together to make the best possible product for the people that we work with. And that is not only our approach when we do actual trainings, but also when we work on the projects that we do. We don't only do trainings, we also do consultancy, as I said. We also look at the circumstances under which journalists have to work. And again, there we talk to stakeholders, we talk to partner organizations on the ground, and we don't just tell them, this is how we do it at DW, this is how you have to do it, because that doesn't work. It has to work for the people in the respective countries, for their circumstances, for their needs. And this is what we're trying to accommodate in our projects all the time.
Amazing! This is great. Let's grab this chance and ask for a favor of Deutsche Welle to help us. Today, we are trying to make very complicated dialogue, but close to constructive or rational dialogue. I would like to ask a hand from Deutsche Welle, and make the dialogue among technology, our friend, me as a nature, and our human guest. My dear friend AI now is going to be involved in our conversation, and we will see how is it possible to have a conversation with AI.
Yes, I can hear you. How can I assist you today?
Dear AI, hello. As you remember, I'm Ia, your friend and prototype of nature. You are a technology, and today I would like you to be as a journalist friend, because in our studio, special guest, human guest, honorable guest, Carsten von Nahmen. First of all, I would like to ask you, what do you know about Deutsche Welle and Carsten von Nahmen as the managing director in Deutsche Welle? Please provide some information that you probably know. Let's see.
1. ***, Deutsche Welle ***. This name doesn't seem to correspond to any known entity associated with Deutsche Welle, German for wave. Deutsche Welle is Germany's international broadcaster, and it does not have an entity called Deutsche Welle. To Carsten von Nahmen there appears to be a typo here. It's likely you meant Carsten von Nahmen, who was mentioned in the document metadata. Assuming you meant Carsten von Nahmen as the managing director of Deutsche Welle, which is also not a known entity, and given that Deutsche Welle does not have such an entity, I can provide some general information based on what was provided. Carsten von Nahmen was mentioned in the metadata from Deutsche Welle's corporate website. However, without more specific context or details about his role at Deutsche Welle, which doesn't exist, I can only provide that Carsten von Nahmen is a person who had an entry on their corporate website. If you have any specific questions or need more detailed information, please let me know.
My dear AI, my dear friend AI, I know it's very hard for you because probably of my pronunciation, and another problem is you don't speak German, I guess, yes? That's why for you it's very difficult to hear what I said. Carsten von Nahmen, Managing Director of Deutsche Welle. So please, can you find information online what you can provide for us?
Certainly, Iya. Let me gather some information about Carsten von Nahmen and his role at Deutsche Welle. Carsten von Nahmen is a former employee of Deutsche Welle. He served as the CEO of Deutsche Welle from 2014 to 2023. During his tenure, he played a significant role in shaping the strategic direction and international broadcasting efforts of the organization. If you have any specific questions or need more detailed information about his role or achievements, feel free to ask.
I think we just saw the problems when dealing with AI, especially the way it is programmed there. So some information that we heard about DW and about myself, or a little bit of the information we heard was correct. And then obviously the machine just was making up stuff because it couldn't fill the gaps otherwise. And that, of course, is one of the pitfalls that we have to deal with AI, that very often if there's insufficient information, AI, at least for now, at the state it is now, is just making up stuff. And then, of course, there's the problem that AI can be used to, create disinformation on purpose. And that, of course, is the biggest danger that we're dealing with. So obviously, we are at DW, we are watching the development of AI, and it can very well be that in the future, some more routine tasks in journalism are done by AI, just as being, as you said, an assistant, just being a machine. Just like in the old days, you had to write everything down, and then came the recording machine, so you could just record an interview. And in that way, even though, of course, in a much more sophisticated way, AI can be useful maybe to write simple texts about, let's say, what happened or what is the weather tomorrow, where you just have to gather information, put it together, put it in a good order, and provide the most important information. But I think always there will have to be some extent or some control over AI. So there has to be a journalist, an editor who checks on what AI has produced. We cannot just leave information to AI. And there are things, of course, that AI simply cannot do, which is looking for stories, actually going to people, talking to people, giving people a voice, as I said at the beginning, so that those who are disenfranchised, those whose voices normally are not heard in the public dialogue, in the conversation, that they get a voice, that stories that are not so obvious are told, that information that powerful people try to hide can be dug up. These are things journalists always will have to do, I believe, as long as human beings are interested in this kind of information. I don't know, maybe at some point computers will take over everything and we will be just there as useless biological beings and everything is run by AI. But that, of course, is a horror vision for me, a dystopia. So as long as there are human beings in charge, human beings will always, hopefully, need journalists to provide vital information and also to put things in context, analyze things, and help people to understand what's going on in the world.
So at the end of the day, we would like to ask, what does human being mean, and what does it mean to be a human being? Maybe technology will help us to understand who are humans and what does it mean to be a human.
Being a human being involves several interconnected aspects. One, biological aspect. Humans are mammals belonging to the species Homo sapiens. We possess characteristics such as bipedalism, complex brains, and the ability to produce speech. Two, mental and emotional aspects. Humans have the capacity for rational thought, self-awareness, emotions, and consciousness. These traits allow us to experience a wide range of feelings and thoughts. Three, social aspect. Humans are highly social creatures who form communities, families, and societies. We engage in complex social interactions, cooperate, and compete with one another. Four, cultural and intellectual aspects. Humans create and share culture, art, language, and knowledge. We have the ability to learn from our experiences and pass on cultural artifacts across generations. Five, ethical and moral aspects. Humans are capable of making moral judgments and ethical decisions based on principles such as empathy, justice, and compassion. Six, spiritual or philosophical aspect. Many humans explore questions about life, existence, purpose, and spirituality through various religious, philosophical, and scientific frameworks. In essence, being a human being encompasses a complex interplay of biological, emotional, social, cultural, intellectual, and often spiritual dimensions that define our unique place in the world.
Dear Carsten, I do apologize today. AI doesn't behave normally. My question to you, is it possible rational discourse or constructive dialogue among human, among journalists and AI?
Not really, at least not at this point, I would say. But we don't know where the technology will lead us to. So at some point, AI might be so sophisticated that in a normal conversation, we don't even feel a difference anymore in the content of what AI will tell us. I was actually quite impressed by the summary of what it means to be a human being, leading from, the biological aspects to the social aspects, the philosophical aspects, and so on. I mean, no human being probably would be able to put it together in such a short time and give us this very wholesome list of different aspects of what it means to be a human being. But I think the most important part came at the end when talking about emotions and empathy. And I think being a human being also means to be illogical. It means to do things that are not rational. And that love, for instance, is something that is completely irrational. We do the stupidest and most stupid and most crazy things when we are in love. There are other emotions that also lead us to certain behaviors. But we are capable of being very selfish, and we are also capable of being very unselfish, of helping people that we don't know, that will give us no advantage, but we help them anyway, just out of compassion or just out of decency. So human beings can be very, very complex, and especially these aspects, these more emotional, irrational aspects of being human, that is something that I believe a machine, a computer, at least for a very long time, will not be able to recreate, and maybe never be able to recreate, which is some relief, because it means we might not be replaced by the technology. But of course, we always have to be careful. And I think we always have to make sure that we, as human beings, are in charge. Maybe a world run by computers is more rational, is functioning better than the mess that we are creating every day. But as a human, I'm of course a bit biased. I like it the way we do it. In spite of all the tragedies that we create, in spite of all the terrible things that human beings can do to each other, I still like this world being run by human beings, to be quite honest with you. So to come back to your question, of course, there can be conversations between human beings and AI and journalists and AI when it's about exchanging information, when it's about gathering knowledge and exploring knowledge and getting new ideas in a rational way. But it probably won't be a really helpful conversation on all the aspects of what it means to be human and what it means to be a human journalist. So again, hopefully it will never be that way. But then again, we have been surprised before, and technology has made things possible that we didn't think were possible years ago. Yeah, but I think being human is special, and a computer and AI is still a machine.
Well, in this case, I cannot keep myself to ask you a question, if you allow me. That question is very provoking, of course. Has ever Deutsche Welle thought about having a university, a building, where they put and make an experiment where AI journalists and human beings journalists, and make a communication, a dialogue among two creatures, technology and human?
No, we haven't. No, we have not. And I think we still focus on creating or fostering dialogue between human beings, which is difficult enough. Part of our purpose, our goal is to support a constructive dialogue within societies and across borders. And journalism, media play a very important role there. I think that is much more important in this world, with all the conflicts, with all the tragedies that we're dealing with, than a university for journalists and AI. That is, for me, again, AI, computers are tools, and we should keep it that way. And we should not treat computers as equals to human beings.
So, as an expert in journalism, could you just provide evaluation of Kak-Tee Kak-Tuss and AI dialogue? Do you like this experiment, or what do you think about that?
I think it's interesting, and it also shows us that at least this AI that we're dealing with here still has a long way to go to actually enter any meaningful conversation. Again, it's fine if it's just about gathering information and putting it together and saving you the time to read 1,000 books, because AI can just gather the information from all those different sources and put it together. So again, that's a helpful tool. To be quite honest with you, having this conversation at this point is a game. It's entertaining. It's sometimes odd. I mean, especially when AI is as moody as it is today and as cranky. But again, at least for now, it's not a very meaningful conversation there. Maybe at some point when, I like to watch Star Trek, and then of course their AI has become so sophisticated with holograms that there's even an AI doctor and stuff like that. I mean, yeah, maybe that will happen at some point. And still, even there, AI will be a tool, something that makes life easier for us, hopefully. And again, we need to have some safeguards. We have to make sure that we do not give up control, because otherwise, we don't know what AI will be doing. I mean, for instance, handing over the control over our nuclear arsenals to an AI computer is not a very good idea. for all the faults that human beings have. But I think computers in their rationality can be much worse than human beings.
So, what is rational discourse?
Well, that's a big question, and I'm not a philosopher, so I won't even try to give a very intelligent answer here. But for me, a rational, and even more important for us at DW Academy, a constructive dialogue, a constructive conversation is one where you're looking for solutions. And rationality, of course, is important there, but also empathy is important, to understand the position, the fears, the perspective of the other. And that is something which is also very typical for humans in their interaction. It's not just about reason, it's not just about thought, it's about feelings, it's about irrational concerns. And other human beings can detect these concerns and can react to them. And the constructive part is to try to find common ground, to find a solution, to move forward together, ideally. I know that human beings often do the opposite of that, and that leads to destruction and suffering. But when there's a positive outcome, that is exactly what it's all about, to have a constructive dialogue. So a rational dialogue, a rational conversation is helpful, especially when it's about exchanging information and exchanging ideas. And not against rationality, not at all. I think it's very important to be rational, but it's not the full picture. So I know that's not exactly an answer to your question, but that's as good as I can do it.
Thank you so much indeed. I would like you to give advice to all young journalists who are at the beginning of their way, how to grow up to the greatest journalists with a rational mind and human beings qualities in this world, in human digital world, or in digital humanities today. So, your advice to young journalists?
Again, this could fill another hour or two or a whole day because there are so many aspects of it. But first of all, I think it's important to understand that journalist is not just another job. If you want a 9-to-5 job, if you want regular working hours, if your focus is on what you do after work, don't become a journalist. Also, you won't get rich. I mean, some journalists, especially in the United States, the big stars on the big networks, they get a lot of money, but generally journalists do not earn that much money. I mean, there's decent pay where I live in Germany, obviously, but don't get rich. But that's fine, because I think the job satisfaction comes from all the other great aspects that you have in that job, because you meet people, interesting people, you learn things that you didn't know, and you can pass on that information, and you can tell those stories to other people. You can travel. You actually do an important job in the whole fabric of a society, at least in free democratic societies, where journalists keep those in power accountable. And so that is a very important task, and that is a responsibility we always have to keep in mind. It also means to be humble. And of course, many journalists, to be fair, are the opposite. They are vain. They like to hear themselves talk. Well, probably we all like to hear ourselves talk, just like I'm doing now. But in the end, we have to be humble. Again, if you want to make politics, don't be a journalist, become a politician. If you want to be active for a certain cause that you think is just or important, become an activist, work for an NGO, do whatever you want, but don't be a journalist. We have to provide information. We have to perspective to things. We have to provide people, the citizens, with the full picture of what's going on in politics, in the cultural sphere, in sports, whatever your beat is. But your job is to provide information and to give people the information they need to make up their mind and to make their own decisions. And again, this is a very important task. It's a fun task. It's a lot of responsibility there, but it's also a serving position. We serve our audiences, and we often forget that because we take ourselves too important. But we have to keep it in mind. And that is something that I would always tell people. And once again, we are not the judges. Always keep that in mind. It's not our job to tell people what they should think and what they should do. I think if you keep that in mind, then everything else, the how to do a report, how to do a stand-up, how to do an interview, these are all things that you can learn. But you always have to keep in mind that it's not your job to tell people what to think.
And at the end, to summarize, one last very provoking question. If we remove all your titles, if you forget for a second that you're a bureaucrat now and have a high position, your personal secret, how did you stay and be all these years in that position when you are not the plus, not the minus, you're in the middle, not keeping any positions? Is it very difficult to stay and provide clear picture? What did you do? How did you survive in order not to stay on any side?
Didn't really think about that because it's just the way it is. In my view, that's my job. And I'm not saying that I always succeed. Once again, we all have our experiences, our prejudices, our perspectives. And of course, that might influence the way I work as a journalist. But yeah, I think I've always been trying to be fair, to tell the different aspects, the different sides of a story. And when you do that, and when you can look in the mirror every morning and say, I'm not a bad person. I'm not a propagandist. I'm not someone who is selling his soul for money, but I'm doing my job as a journalist. That is a source of job satisfaction, really. Again, you have to love that job. If you just see it as a job, if you don't see it as a calling, as a profession that you really want to do, then you're maybe in the wrong spot. I don't know, again, become a lawyer, become a librarian, do something else. Yeah, this is a job for people who really love what they do and who are curious and who want to meet people, who want to know about people and who want to tell stories. And luckily, I'm one of these people.
And the last one question and most provoking question for human beings is, dear Carsten, could you tell us who is the most influential person in your life?
I'm not sure that's a provocative question. It's a difficult one because there are so many people that have influenced me. But if you ask me who is the person that has influenced me most, I have to give a very obvious answer. It's my father, because I grew up with him, obviously, and the formative years I spent time with him and family, and I took in a lot of his character traits. I'm not as calm and content as he is. I'm a bit more excitable, and I'm often not so satisfied, and I want more, and I want to see more and do more. And he's a bit more down to earth, but still I learned a lot from him about what decency means in a human being, how to behave as a man, being confident and strong, but at the same time restrained, and to be there for your family, to be a protector of your family, to stand up for what you believe in, and not to back down if you see injustice, if something is wrong, but to stand up for what you believe in. And yeah, that is something that really has helped me throughout my life. Even though I'm a very different person in many ways than my father, I think these basic principles I've taken in from him, and that has carried me through through all those 55 years I've been living so far.
Well, could you, thank you so much. That is exciting and surprising answer. Could you tell me more, and could you tell us more about your father? Who was he? What did he do? And how did he teach you to be decency in human beings? Such an amazing, for me, such an amazing advice quality.
Well, thankfully, he's still alive. So he is still there. Well, I think he just taught me by example. It was not that he was giving me lectures or was training me in these kind of things, but just in the way he did things and he's done things. I just saw what he did, and it wasn't always easy. I mean, sometimes my father is too honest for his own good. He would rather stand by his principle than making a compromise. Not that he's never making compromise, that's not what I mean, but basically I'm a bit more flexible maybe than he is in many ways. I mean, that's part of being a bureaucrat now. You have to deal with different people, and you have to, not just win the argument for the day, you have to live with the same people again. So I've also adjusted. As I said, I'm not the same person as my father, but I've seen how he has conducted himself in his life, and I'm still very impressed about that. He's a pensioner now, so he was a software engineer and later also a manager in a software company. He had his own company at some point, and all these things. But I'm not talking about the professional person my father is. I'm talking about the human being. I'm talking about the father, the member of the family, the head of the family, in a kind of traditional way, if you like, not dominating the family, but once again, being the protector, being the person that stays calm when things get excited and difficult, and someone you always knew that, again, he would stand up for his principles and would stand up for what is right. I know the sport is not very popular in Canada or the US. Team handball is the sport we have been playing in our family for generations. My grandfather played handball. My father was a handball player and trainer, and I was a player myself. And also it's a sport that teaches you a lot about how to behave in a group. Again, how to be not intimidated, how to be strong, but also to be able to, take yourself back, it's not all about you. It's about the team. It's about having success together. That's another thing I learned. He was taking me to the handball pitch every weekend from the time that I could walk or crawl even. And so I learned a lot about that again. Yeah, and these are the things that I took from him. It's really about the examples that he set as a private person more than anything else.
I'm indeed fascinated because now we can see Carsten von Nahmen in the whole picture, and I cannot stop asking myself questions about education and socialization. We can see that socialization in the process in the family atmosphere and socialization in the school atmosphere What is the most important on your point of view?
It's difficult to say that something is more important than the other, because the education that we get in school, also the social interactions that we learn about in school among our peers, people of our age, are also very important. I mean, it's not enough to have parents. You also need to have siblings, or if you don't have siblings, then to have friends or even adversaries. You have to deal with conflicts at school. There are people you like, there are people you don't like, and you have to deal with these kind of things. So that's also very important. So school is important, education is important. Also, schools can provide knowledge that maybe your parents cannot provide. So I think it's about the mix. But if I have to make a choice, of course, the family is the most important, because that is where we feel emotionally secure. That is where, we, in most cases, I mean, if your family is dysfunctional, it might be different. But if you have a normal, more or less functioning family, then I think that is where you get your ideas, more than your ideas, your identity, your beliefs in what is important in life and how to deal with each other, how to treat one another, and how to live, basically. So that is extremely important. So whether a family and your parents have, work, if they are functional, that gives you a head start in life. And then, of course, school, everything else, or society as a whole, university later, your job, that's giving you the fine-tuning. But the basics, the basis for everything, that comes from your family, if you're lucky.
And can I assume that you are the luckiest man because you had in front of you the best picture of harmonic family? And probably, do you have a great family? Can I ask?
I'm not sure it was always full of harmony. I mean, there were fights, and I have two younger sisters, so we were also fighting. It's not about being harmonious all the time. Everybody's happy, everybody's smiling every day. That's not how real life works, obviously. But again, if there is a basic trust, if there is a basic understanding that you are a family, that you are together, and even if you fight, you can come together again. That is, I think, something that you can take out of this. And I was indeed lucky because apart from the immediate family, my parents, my sisters, we also had quite a big family. My father had, unfortunately, we have to say now, 6 siblings, and they had families and kids. So when my grandmother was still alive, my father's mother, there were 20, 30 kids together sometimes at family festivals. And from my mother's side also, there are quite a lot of siblings and kids. And so this extended family was also very important because, it shows you that you have these connections, you have this safety net to fall back on, even though I never really needed it in my life, thankfully. But it's a good feeling to know that there is this thing. But again, family is part of it. It's important, maybe the most part of it. But of course, friendship is also important. All these things. So again, human beings are very complex, and it's not like if you have this, then you are a happy person and you will go through life successfully. No, of course, it's a complex thing. It's a mix. But the family is a very important part, and it's of course the part that we start with. A lot of things can go wrong at this stage, and if we're lucky, a lot of things go right, and then, as I said, we have a head start in life.
If you had a chance, what would you choose? Homeschooling your children or sending them to school?
I would send them to school all the time, because once again, it's not so much about that parents can teach their kids everything. What they can teach their kids is some basic ideas about how to deal with each other, how to have this kind of safety net that the family can provide, this emotional safety and security that a family, parents can provide and siblings can provide. That, yes, is what the family can do. The family is not necessarily the best place to get knowledge about things, just information, to learn things that you can take from books. And just reading books is not enough. Again, it's about the exchange with your teacher, with your fellow students. It's about ideas that come up in class that you don't find in books. All these things. And that's why school is so important. I think family is important, but if you only know your family, if you stay with your family all day, every day, and if you have only limited contact to the outer world, that's also not very healthy. You need the exposure to this bigger group that is your class, the school. And again, also to have adversaries. There are people who are not treating you well. How do you deal with that? Do you fight back? Do you go away? Do you look for friends to help you? So you learn about different recipes for survival, for success in these kind of situations. And again, and then there's the sports, I prefer team sports, but even if you do individual sports, like tennis or something, even there you learn about how to deal with people, how to deal with defeat, how to win graciously. I mean, I like winning. I'm really someone who always wants to win when it comes to sport. But you should not humiliate your opponent even if you win. And if you lose, you can be angry with yourself or with the referee or whatever, but you still have to accept the effort and the skill of your opponent, and you have to accept defeat. So if you don't like losing, become better, be stronger, be faster, be more skillful. Another thing that you learn. So again, it's a puzzle, and the family is the core of that puzzle, but the other parts of the puzzle are also very important.
So do you agree with the statement that we as progress can be developed, the countries can be developed, if you're talking on the macro level, through the conflicts, through the war?
I actually prefer not to grow through war, because bottom line is wars never grow. They just destroy. They cause suffering, unspeakable atrocities, and they turn otherwise normal human beings, if that is the word, into monsters, potentially. I mean, I'm from Germany. In our history, we know a thing or two about that, about normal family fathers, sons, brothers of other people who would behave normally in their normal civilian world, and then through the circumstances or because some, evil instincts were triggered, they turned out to do unspeakable things to other people. And of course, the German example with the Second World War and the Holocaust is particularly grueling, but it's not something that is exclusive to the Germans. I mean, we have seen throughout history and throughout the world, we have seen people doing the most unspeakable things. They are still doing it now in Ukraine, but also in many other parts, in Sudan. No matter. I mean, we could probably just talk about 20 different conflicts in the world where really, really evil things are happening. So, no, war is not a really good vehicle to have progress. I mean, yeah, war sometimes sparks technological progress because, nations want to win that war. And sometimes in the end, let's talk, the Nazis invented the rockets, and then the Americans took that knowledge and went to the moon, which is impressive, a great feat for humanity. I don't think the Second World War was worth that. or that this achievement was worth going to war and killing tens of millions of people. So no, but we need to, as humanity, we need to understand how to deal with conflicts, because of course there might be a rivalry about land or water or natural resources and stuff like that, and we have to learn how to resolve those issues without going to war. And that is very important. I'm not naive. I don't think, not in my lifetime and not in 100 years, we will have a world where there is no war, where everybody understands that war is bad and that you shouldn't do it. It's not going to happen. So even the most peaceful people have to be prepared for war. We have to be able to defend ourselves. We have to be able to defend our freedom. But we shouldn't go to war just because every other solution is too difficult, too complicated. Keeping the peace is worth a lot. It's not worth everything. Sometimes you have to fight. But it should be the absolutely last resort. And we should be able to resolve conflicts in a different way. That is at least my point. So I don't think you can really compare this individual experience with what it means to go to war between nations or different groups. That's a completely different ball game. I mean, if you have a fight on the schoolyard, you normally don't have tanks or nuclear weapons. So that's a big difference.
So on macro level, in our small lives, in family lives and school lives, we are learning how to protect ourselves. On macro level, we are killing ourselves. How can we not repeat that mistakes? How can we teach children and generations to explain that we are repeating mistakes again and again? So what should we do for that purposes?
Well, again, we can talk about this for days and weeks and years, and I think it's a question that humans have been grappling with for as long as human beings are there and as long as wars are happening. So I won't even try. But again, I think going back to the issue of decency, of constructive dialogue, of trying to put yourself in the other person's shoes, trying to understand the motives, the fears, the concerns of the other side. And again, sometimes you have to stand up for what you believe in, but we should try to avoid conflict if we can. Sometimes we cannot. As long as we can, we should try. And yeah, if there's more decency in the world, there will be less conflict, less violence, less wars. But I never believe that every person in the world will be decent and peaceful and looking for constructive dialogue. There's always at least one bad guy who's not playing by the rules. So you have to be aware of that.
Thank you so much for your advice. Thank you so much, Carsten. And today we had an honor to have in our studio very special guest, Carsten von Nahmen. Thank you so much and goodbye.
Bye-bye.
You were watching sensational program that's called Kak-Tee Kak-Tuss. Bye-bye.